Om Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namne Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine
ఏమైంది నువ్వు వచ్చేసా
Nirvite Shasana Bhadi Pasyata Desatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhattacharya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Ram. Right here, right? Is there another student? Or have you read this already?
Yeah, I think that is the one.
Another student, loudly. Do you consider your movement the major form of enlightenment emanating from the United States today? What particular role does your movement play in the White House psychological warfare department? Will you be coming to our 4th of July demonstration against the United States this year and take up the real political issues? Again, many students began shouting. Madhudvisa Swami took the microphone. I can answer if you like. Our movement is not from the United States. If you have some paranoia that everything is coming from the United States, well, that is your hang-up, not mine. Applause. And second of all, our spiritual master came to the United States to start this Krishna conscious movement because he got a free ticket on the boat to go there. If you would have sent him a free ticket, he probably would have come to Australia first. So he's trying to spread love of God. He's not trying to start any kind of political movement. He's trying to spark a revolutionary consciousness. I think you are also interested in revolution. We are interested in revolution also, but we are interested in revolution which will help people to feel peace themselves, whether they are communist or Marxist, or whatever it is you like. We're trying to help people attain happiness whether they are. Madhudvisa Swami's remarks triggered the largest vocal protest yet. The commotion rose as students all over the hall began to shout. There was no possibility of a peaceful philosophical discussion. The devotee's greatest concern became getting Prabhupada out of the hall unharmed. Prabhupada rose from his Vyasasana and, escorted by his disciples, left by a side exit. A larger crowd of students had gathered outside the door as Prabhupada emerged, but he entered his waiting car without incident. As he rode slowly through a cluster of students, a girl kicked at the car with her booted foot. And as the devotees were getting into their vans, students threw stones. Finally, as the devotees drove off the campus, they had to pass under an elevated walkway where some waiting students threw black paint down onto the vans. Riding in his car, Prabhupada was mostly silent, but he seemed disgusted. He said that in the future, he would only give lectures in classes where he was invited. No more wide-open lectures. Srila Prabhupada flew from Melbourne to Chicago, stopping overnight in Hawaii. His schedule allowed him only a couple days in Chicago, where he would attend that city's first Rath Yatra festival. He was very keen on holding Rath Yatras in big cities around the world. And although large crowds often could not hear Krishna conscious philosophy without becoming restless, angered, or even violent, everyone could enjoy or benefit from a Rath Yatra festival. Srila Prabhupada had written in the Nectar of Devotion, quoting from the Bhavishya Purana, a person who follows the Rath Yatra cart, when the Rathas pass in front or from behind, even if born of a lowly family, will surely be elevated to the position of achieving equal opulence with Krishna. So Prabhupada and the disciples were in Australia now. They were in Australia. They were speaking in front of a group of students, but these students were actually trying to challenge and being very abusive with the devotees. And the student was keep on asking questions, saying that do you consider this major enlightenment from the United States? Basically thinking that this Krishna consciousness came from the USA, and thinking it's all based off of politics, if I'm not wrong. And it's linking back to the White House. And the students began shouting more and more, and Madhudvisa Maharaj took the microphone. And he said that this movement is not from the US, and everything is actually from India. And Prabhupada went to the US because he had a free ticket there, and if you think it's from US, then that's their fault, not ours. And he was saying that how if they had sent him a free ticket, then he would have come to Australia. And their job was to spread the love of God. He's not trying to. They weren't trying to start any political movement. And he started talking about a revolution and how he was saying how they might be interested. But the point of the devotees' revolution was to bring peace and happiness to all the people around the world through the message of Krishna, with the love of God. But this, instead of agreeing to this brought the biggest protest. And soon, then they realized that there would be no discussion here, no peaceful discussion. And so the devotees decided to leave their side. But even as the devotees and Prabhupada were leaving, they were having stones thrown at them. And then when they were passing, they were disrespected. When they were passing a walkway in the car, some students threw black paint onto the bands. And Prabhupada was very much disgusted. And now he says no more wide open lectures, only where he was invited to. And Prabhupada then flew to Chicago. And he had a scheduled Rath Yatra festival. And Prabhupada was very keen about the Rath Yatra festival because it's a very good program where many devotees or many people are very interested in and like. And because there will be a philosophy talk, but it's mainly the parade and how we did kirtan and all the different colors and everyone likes it. Prabhupada quotes from the Rites and Nectar devotion, quoting from Bhavishya Purana, saying that if anyone follows the Rath Yatra cart, and even if he was born from a lowly family, sure to be elevated to a position equal to opulence with Vishnu. So how purifying it is to attend a Rath Yatra. Second row.
In Jagannath Puri, the original home of Jagannath worship, a Westerner could see Lord Jagannath only during the yearly Rath Yatra festival, when the deity would come out of the temple and ride on his cart. And besides, very few Westerners would actually go to Jagannath Puri, where Srila Prabhupada and his Krishna consciousness movement were making Lord Jagannath available to everyone by bringing their Rath Yatra right down the main street of their city. It may seem odd to the average American or Australian, but from the viewpoint of Lord Jagannath and his followers, it was perfectly proper. Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the universe, was for everyone, everywhere, regardless of nationality or religion. This year's festival, 1974, would mark the 8th annual San Francisco Rath Yatra. And now, at Prabhupada's urging, devotees in more and more cities were beginning to hold the festival. Srila Prabhupada wanted to give utmost prestige to this kind of preaching, so he had gone out of his way to come to Chicago, where he had never been before, just to ride an hour down State Street on Lord Jagannath's cart. Prabhupada felt that his disciples, by holding Rath Yatras in cities on every continent, would defeat false religion, and spontaneously people would be attracted to Krishna simply by enjoying a festival of singing, dancing, feasting, and seeing the Lord. Prabhupada stood in downtown Chicago before the large, elaborately decorated car, eager to ascend to the seat where he would ride during the procession, but there was no ladder. So he waited while devotees ran to a hardware store and got one. Then he mounted the cart and sat on his Vyasasana. The city was busy with thousands of shoppers and workers. Many members of Chicago's large Indian community had turned out to receive the Lord's blessing and to observe this tradition so well known to them. And hundreds of Prabhupada's disciples throughout the Midwest had gathered to pull on the ropes of the cart, lead kirtans, and distribute prasadam and back to Godhead magazines as the big cart plied down one of the busiest streets in America. Although several policemen on motorcycles led the procession, their mode was hardly that of the king of Orissa, who had traditionally led the Rath Yatra procession in India. Each year, the king would present himself as a menial servant, leading the parade by sweeping the road before Lord Jagannath with a gold-handled broom. The Chicago police, however, seemed intent only in getting the parade over with as soon as possible. With stern anxiety, they dedicated themselves to keeping open the flow of ordinary automobile traffic. They acknowledged that the devotees had an official permit for the parade, but they continually prodded them to pull the cart faster, threatening to terminate the parade entirely. I'll summarize. So in Jagannath Puri, which is the original place for Lord Jagannath worship. A Westerner could not enter the temple, and they could only see Lord Jagannath only during the yearly Rath Yatra festival. And very less people also go to Jagannath Puri because of that reason. And now Srila Prabhupada, with his Krishna consciousness movement, was bringing Lord Jagannath everywhere via the Rath Yatra. So it may be seeming odd to the Westerners, like Americans or the average Australians, but it was very proper for Lord Jagannath and his followers. And this year, 1974, would mark the 8th annual San Francisco Rath Yatra, which was started in 1968. And based on Prabhupada's advice, many other cities were holding the festival. And for the same way, Chicago, Prabhupada had never been there, and he made he had gone out of his way to go to Chicago for the Rath Yatra ceremony. And Prabhupada felt that by conducting Rath Yatras on every continent, it would defeat the false religion, and people would be attracted to Krishna, because by participating in the festival of singing, dancing, feasting, and seeing the Lord. So Prabhupada came before the cart, and there was no ladder. The devotees ran to a store and got one. Then he mounted the cart and sat on his Vyasasan. There were many Chicago's Indian community who had turned out to receive the blessings, and even Prabhupada disciples from Midwest had gathered to pull on the ropes, lead kirtans, and distribute prasadam and Back to Godhead magazines. So the policemen were leading the procession, and here it says that their mood was hardly that of King of Orissa, who leads the annual Rath Yatra in Puri, and there the king would become a servant and sweep the road for Lord Jagannath with a golden broom, gold handled broom. And here the police was just intent to getting the parade over as soon as possible, and they wanted to make sure that the traffic doesn't get stopped, and they wanted to make sure that the automobile traffic keeps on flowing. Even though they had permit, the devotees, the police still they were basically pushing them to pull the cart faster. If not, they would terminate the parade entirely.
By Krishna's grace, however, everyone, including the Chicago police, became satisfied as the procession moved along peacefully for several miles, finally arriving at the Civic Center Plaza. Amid skyscrapers and city noise, Srila Prabhupada addressed the outdoor audience. Immediately following the lecture, the devotees began prasadam distribution and kirtan. Prabhupada was pleased by the festival. San Francisco, July 7. Thousands followed the three carts for several miles to Golden Gate Park. Srila Prabhupada, riding on the second cart beneath the deity of Subhadra, wore the same golden wool cap he had worn in Australia, a white bulky knit sweater, and a garland of red roses. Despite this recent extensive traveling, he was alert and well. He looked out at the sea of devotees and parade followers and took great satisfaction in the transcendental scene. In his speech before a crowd of 10,000, Prabhupada said that the Americans should lead the world in propagating Krishna consciousness. I know that all American ladies and gentlemen here are educated and intelligent, he said, and I am very much obliged to the Americans who have helped me make this movement popular all over the world. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first introduced the Hare Krishna movement, he said, Bharata Bhumite Hoila Manusya Janmayar, Janma Sarthaka Kari Kora Paropakar. He thus expressed his desire by saying that anyone who has taken birth as a human being in Bharatvarsh or India should understand the Krishna conscious movement and spread it all over the world. for the benefit of all humanity. He also predicted that in all the villages and towns of the entire world, the Krishna conscious movement will be known. So with the cooperation of you, young Americans who are kindly helping to spread this movement, it is now factually becoming well known all over the world. I recently went to Melbourne, Australia, where we held a similar festival in which many thousands of people joined and chanted and danced with us. Then I went to Chicago, where we held the same ceremony. Now this morning I have come here, and I'm so glad to see that you are also joining this movement. Prabhupada's fingers tapped lightly against his kartals as he spoke. His eyes half closed. He chose his words with confidence, and those words echoed across the meadow. Prabhupada requested his audience not to think that Krishna consciousness was sectarian. It was meant for everyone because the real nature of the self was spiritual. Chanting the holy name and dancing, he said, were not ordinary. It is open to everyone uh, who will simply chant the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. You are generally young, whereas I am an old man who may die at any moment. Therefore, I request you to take this moment seriously, understand it yourself, and then preach it throughout your country. People outside America generally follow and imitate what America does. I'm traveling all over the world, and everywhere I see other countries building skyscrapers and in other ways imitating your country. Therefore, if you kindly become Krishna conscious and chant and dance in ecstasy, in emotional love of God, then the entire world will follow you. Thus, the entire world can become Vaikuntha, a spiritual world in which there will be no more trouble. Thank you so much. So I think this is a video also available for this, right? If you'll remember. What is that? Here, Prabhupada said he was very much satisfied with the Chicago program. And the procession went very well, peaceful, several miles. And the immediately followed by lecture, Prabhupada began prasadam distribution, kirtan. Prabhupada was pleased by the festival. Now he comes to San Francisco on July 7th. There are also 3 chariots which is going to the Golden Gate Park. Thousands are following. Prabhupada has his own seat in the Subhadra Maharani's chariot. And he feels great satisfaction to see so many people are joining. And he gave a speech, almost 10,000 people. He said, you all are very educated, intelligent men. And he also mentioned that this movement, this program was predicted by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that in every town and village, his glories will be spread. Now I can see that with the help of this new American boys and girls, this is becoming possible. So he says, I just came from Australia. We had a similar festival. I came from Chicago. We had the similar festival. Prabhupada is very confidently speaking. What he's speaking? That take this movement seriously. This is not a sectarian movement. It's meant for everyone. But if you follow, a whole world is following America. I'm an old man, I can die, but I want to leave the responsibility to you. You please take it and help the whole world. The whole world is making skyscraper buildings, imitating your country. If you chant Hare Krishna, whole world will chant Hare Krishna, they all will go to Vaikuntha. My humble request, you take it. This is very famous, in the documentary also. I think this is there. Nipa, you're there? Nipa,
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Gurudasa had sent a letter to all ISKCON centers inviting devotees to attend the opening of Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan. He had invited life members from Bombay and Calcutta and had reserved cars for them on the trains. Prabhupada also was inviting his disciples to come to Vrindavana for Janmashtami. Lecturing before hundreds of devotees in Los Angeles, he said, I invite all of you to come to Vrindavana to the opening of Krishna Balaram Mandir. Prabhupada had also mailed invitations to his god brothers, and when one of them, Sridhara Maharaj of Navdeepa, accepted the invitation, Sridhar Prabhupada replied, assuring him of comfortable accommodations and suggesting the easiest way to travel from Calcutta to Vrindavana. Srila Prabhupada also told Sridhara Maharaj of his preaching. You will be glad to know that our books are selling very nicely. Last year we sold about 4 million books, and this year within 6 months we have completed last year's quota, and therefore we can reasonably expect to double the sale of last year. The only difficulty is that we are expanded worldwide organization and it requires very acute management to keep up the status quo. So by Krishna's grace, everything is going on nicely. Regarding preaching tour, it has become a little difficult for me because I have got the same heart trouble as you have. And still, I am moving just to encourage these young boys and girls who are working on my behalf. On July 15, only 10 days before Prabhupada's proposed arrival in Vrindavan, he wrote almost identical letters to his sannyasi disciples, inviting them to come and resolve many personal matters and items of business that had been pending during this busy tour. I cordially invite you to attend our opening ceremony in Vrindavan because all of our sannyasis will be present there. You also come there as a regular sannyasi and take part. That is my desire. When Karandhara, the newly appointed GPC for India, began to express doubts that everyone would be ready on time, Prabhupada replied from Los Angeles, the festival must be gorgeously done. It should not be poor. If there is a scarcity of money, it will be supplied. There must be full prasadam for all the guests. You plan for that and I'll supply the funds. Complete prasad distribution must go on. Regarding the temple not being finished on time, that is your responsibility. What can I do? Although Prabhupada had responded to Karandhara forcefully, the note of uncertainty from his head manager in India disturbed him. He wrote to Surbhi, who was in charge of Vrindavana construction. I am a little agitated in mind because Karandhara's letter says that there may be some work to be done even during the time of our festival. While in Los Angeles, Prabhupada also received word that London Rath Yatra scheduled for later that month had been cancelled by the local authorities. The previous year's parade, officials said, had seriously interfered with traffic. Prabhupada insisted that the devotees protest this unreasonable ruling. It is religious discrimination, he said, and he advised that the sympathetic Indians in London approach the ambassador and request him to present the matter before the Queen. The recent statements of the Reverend Powell of Melbourne could be used to demonstrate that Christians should not be alarmed by Krishna consciousness movement. The police objection means that the whole religious ceremony should be stopped. Prabhupada challenge, what is this? Simply for some technical mistake now they will stop our whole religious ceremony? Gurudasa had written a sent letter to all the ISKCON temples to attend the opening for the Krishna Balram Mandir in Vrindavan. And he invited all the life members from Bombay and Calcutta and had reserved cars for them on the trains. Prabhupada also invited disciples to Vrindavana for Janmashtami. He also, and lecturing hundreds of devotees in LA, he said, I invite all of you to Vrindavana for the opening of the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Prabhupada mailed the invitations, and when one of them, God brother Sridhara Maharaj of Navdeepa, accepted the invitation, Prabhupada assured about his comfortable accommodations. And Srila Prabhupada also told Sridhara Maharaj of his preaching, and he was very happy, Prabhupada, about to know that the books were selling very nicely, and last year the sales was about 4 million books, and this year within 6 months we have completed last year's quota, and the sale was expected to be double. The only difficulty, because it was like expanding worldwide organization, so it required an acute management, and so by Krishna's grace everything still was going on nicely. And regarding the preaching, it became a little difficult for him because he has some heart, he explained about his heart trouble as everyone else, and he's still able to move and just to encourage these young boys and girls who are working on his behalf. After 10 days on July 15, Prabhupada proposed his arrival in Vrindavan. He wrote almost identical letters to sannyasi disciples, inviting them and resolving the personal matters of the business that had been pending. And he also cordially invited to attend the opening ceremony in Vrindavan because of all of sannyasis will be present. And he also came there as a regular sannyasi. He said he should come as a regular sannyasi and take part. That was Prabhupada's desire. When Karandhara, the newly appointed GBC for India, began to express doubts that whether everything would be ready, Prabhupada replied from Los Angeles and said the festival must be done very gorgeously. There should be no scarcity of money. If it is required, he will supply the funds and complete the prasadam distribution. And there must be full prasadam for all the guests. That's what Prabhupada expressed. And regarding the temple not being finished, he said, it is your responsibility. What can I do? And Prabhupada responded to Karandhara forcefully, saying that note the uncertainty from his head manager. He wrote to Surbi, who was in charge of Vrindavana, saying that I'm a little agitated because Karandhara says that there may be some work left during the festival. And while in Los Angeles, Prabhupada received word from the London Yath Yatra and had been for the later that month had been cancelled because the previous year's parade official said they seriously interfered with the traffic, and Prabhupada insisted that this was unreasonable and it is religious discrimination, and he advised the Indians in London to approach the ambassador and request him the matter before the Queen. And the statements of the Reverend Paul of Melbourne could be used as a to demonstrate that Christians should not be alarmed because of this movement. And then he said the police objection means that the whole religious ceremony should be stopped. And Prabhupada challenged what is this? And because of simple technical mistake, now they will stop the religious ceremony. So this is what he expressed, Prabhupada.
Second to
I read. I read.
yeah. You didn't read? Vijayanand for you.
Prabhupada said that if the city continued to prohibit the parade, the devotee should erect a stationary cart in Hyde Park and hold a festival there without a procession. After holding our ceremony, said Prabhupada, we shall take the deity in a palanquin and go to Trafalgar Square. The Ratha will stay, it will not move, but we shall take the deities on palanquin and go to Trafalgar Square. In this way, take police permission and after going there, along with the ceremony, protest. They cannot object, but the Ratha must be seen and the people must know that the rascal police government has stopped it. Prabhupada repeated his instructions several times. He was in a grave mood as he instructed his followers. My Guru Maharaja used to say, Prana Ache Yandra Sei Hetu Prachara. One who has got life, he can preach. The dead man cannot preach. So you become with life, not like dead man. Just like all my God brothers, they are dead men, and therefore they are envious of my activities. They have no life. If you want to make an easygoing life, showing the deity and then sleep, then it is a failure movement. Prabhupada could not bear to hear that such an important festival as Ratha Yatra was being stopped. We shall abide by all the rules, he said, but we must have this festival. They saw last year that in an open sunshine, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people stood in Trafalgar Square for 3 hours, and they do not go to the church. So they have seen there is something. Otherwise, how people have taken so much interest? Brahmananda Swami, yes. Just like in the San Francisco paper, they admitted this is the most popular festival. Prabhupada, yes. 15,000 people attended my lecture silently in San Francisco, and so they're seeing there is something in the movement, but sometimes some parties do not want us to go on without objection, or else they will be finished. On the day of Prabhupada's departure from Los Angeles, he addressed the assembled devotees in the temple, encouraging them to remain faithful in Krishna consciousness, and he revealed his own feelings of urgency. His constant traveling was for his disciples, so they would remain strong, and if they remained strong, following the simple programs he had given them, then their success was guaranteed, some way or other, he said. We have introduced this program in the Western countries, and you are so intelligent. You have very soon captured it and so stick it to the standard. Then your life is successful. It is not all that difficult, but don't deviate. Then you are pakka. Pakka means solid. Mamyeva ye prapadyante mayam yetam tarantite. If you remain solid in Krishna consciousness, then Maya cannot touch you. So that is my request. I'm traveling all over the world. I'm going to see how things are going in Dallas and New Vrindavan. So my touring is natural. I have started this movement. I wanted to see it is going nicely. Don't deviate. That is my only request. Prabhupada began to cry and simply concluded, then you will remain solid. Thank you very much. So for the parade which did not get permission in London, so Prabhupada was giving some other instructions to the devotees that they should follow. So he mentioned that if the city is prohibiting the parade, the devotee should have an stationary cart in Hyde Park and hold a festival there, and without a procession. And after holding the ceremony, Prabhupada mentioned that they should take the deity in a palanquin and go to the Trafalgar Square. So basically, their plan will be like the Ratha will stay there itself and it will not move, but they will take the deities on palanquin and go to the Trafalgar Square. He requested them to take the permission to have this kind of event, and after going, they will protest, and police cannot object. So he also mentioned that the Ratha must be seen and the people must know that the rascal police government has stopped it. So Prabhupada repeated his instructions several times, and he was in a grave mood, mentioning that his Guru Maharaja used to say that one has got life, if he can preach, and the dead man cannot preach. So he insisted that they should not be like the God brothers who are dead men, because they were simply showing the deity and sleeping. So everyone should not be like that, and they should start preaching, and that will only give the life. Otherwise, it will become a failure movement. And Prabhupada could not bear the news that such an important festival, Rath Yatra, is being stopped. So he mentioned that they will be abiding by all the rules, but they should have this festival. So last year, in open sunshine, thousands of people and tens of thousands of people stood in the Trafalgar Square for 3 hours and even did not go to the church. So they see that there is something in this event, and the people have taken so much interest. So even for this Brahmananda Swami mentioned that even the San Francisco paper, they admitted that this is the most popular festival. And Prabhupada mentioned that like for 15, is more than like 15,000 people attended my lecture silently in San Francisco. So they see that something is there in the movement, and sometimes people or other parties doesn't want us to go on without objection. So or else they will be finished. And on the day of Prabhupada's departure from Los Angeles, he was giving an address at the assembled devotees in the temple, and he encouraged the devotees to remain faithful in Krishna consciousness. And also he mentioned that his feelings of urgency. The reason he was making a lot of travel is to make sure that they remain strong, and only if they remain strong and follow the simple programs which is given to them, they will become their success will be guaranteed. And also he mentioned that they introduced the program in Western countries, and you are intelligent, so so they captured it only and stick it to the standard. So then the life will be successful. Otherwise, successful, and it is not that difficult, and they should not deviate. So it will be a solid actually. And if they remain solid in Krishna consciousness, then even Maya cannot touch them. So he requested them that he was traveling all over the world, and he was to see how things are going in Dallas and Vrindavan. So he mentioned that his touring was natural, and he started the movement, and he wanted to see that it is going nicely and it should not be deviated. That is the only request. And he concluded that if they remain solid, they should remain solid, and he thanked all the devotees.
So he's speaking to us. Prabhupada began to cry and simply concluded, then you will remain solid. Hope we can imbibe that mood, the gravity and the sincerity. No? New Vrindavan, July 18th, 1974. When is the inauguration? Sorry, there is sound coming here. July 18, 1974. A letter from Karandar reached Srila Prabhupada, informing him of his resignation as GVC for India. Oh my God. The responsibilities were too great for him, for he had only recently come back to Krishna consciousness. He would continue to follow the spiritual program, but he could not be the GBC Again, Srila Prabhupada was set back, and before several GBC men in his room at New Vrindavan, he asked, what to do? What shall we do? So maybe I should give up these projects in India. But Srila Prabhupada, devotees replied, those India projects are very dear to you. But what can be done? Prabhupada asked. Except for Gurudas, none of the devotees in Vrindavan thought that the building would be ready by the scheduled grand opening. Work was going along slowly as usual, and except for the deity hall area, the land was still a construction site. There was no altars, no deities. They just thought Gurudas so feared displeasing Prabhupada that he could not bear to admit that building would not be ready. That date had been set, and Prabhupada did not want excuses. It has to be done by Janmashtami, he wrote. There is no question of delay. Gurudas admitted that the temple construction would be completely finished by Janmashtami, but he reasoned that the opening ceremony could still take place, even if the final touches on the temple weren't done. Because there was no regular GBC secretary for India, Prabhupada did not receive accurate reports on the Vrindavan temple construction. When Tamal Krishna Goswami had left in April to preach in West, several months had passed before Prabhupada had appointed a replacement, Karandar. Now, after only a few weeks, Karandar had resigned. Gurudas' version, therefore, was the only one Prabhupada had received. The end of July grew near and devotees prepared to travel to Vrindavan for a fiasco. Let's see what happened. Vrindavan, August 4, 1974. When Prabhupada's car pulled up at the ISKCON property in Ramandati, a group of devotees greeted him with kartal, kirtan, and flowers. Some 25 devotees from temples around the world had already gathered for the grand opening celebration. And along with the Vrindavan devotees, they crowded happily around Srila Prabhupada. No formal walkways had been constructed, and Prabhupada walked through the half-constructed halls, past piles of sand and bricks, making his way towards the deity house. Even here, the lack of ornamentation and finishing was apparent, and rubble lay all around. What is this? Prabhupada demanded as he toured the construction site. There is nothing here. There is nothing here. Where is the temple? You told me the temple was finished. Amazing, huh? Gurudas, Surabhi, Gunarnava, and others directly responsible were unable to answer. Their faces went white. Prabhupada was furious. How could you open this? The visiting devotees also began speaking among themselves. It's not ready. How can you open? But Prabhupada, one devotees from all over the world are coming. Stop them immediately, Prabhupada said. There will be no opening. Prabhupada had burst the bubble. The illusion that they would be ready for the grand opening. Prabhupada's anger was frightening, and the devotees who surrounded him were no longer carefree and joyful. You are going to open this temple? Prabhupada scoffed. The altar is ready, said Harikesh, who had come from Japan and to attend the opening. We can install the deity, and you cannot open this temple, Prabhupada shouted. This temple is not completed. Prabhupada then walked into his house, followed by the Vrindavan managers and few other leaders. Whoever could keep his distance from Prabhupada in this mood considered himself spared. Surabhi's wife ran off to pray to Krishna, afraid of Prabhupada's ferocity. In his room, Prabhupada's anger only increased. He yelled at Gurudas for mismanagement. He yelled at Surabhi. He yelled at all of them. No one dared to offer suggestions or excuses. There was nothing to do but turn white and become depressed. Prabhupada suddenly inquired whether the temple could be opened despite the mess. Can you have the deity room ready at least? He turned to Surabhi. This is an insult to our society. What will people think? We have announced it everywhere. No, nobody actually knows about it, Srila Prabhupada. Surabhi replied fearfully, exposing himself for another blast. Oh, Prabhupada somewhat changed his tone. You have not made any propaganda about it? No invitations? Not yet, Prabhupada. Not to the people in Vrindavan. They do not expect it to open because everyone who has been here can see that it is not possible to open. They know it's not ready. This is farce, Prabhupada scowled. It is fiasco. And disgusted, he looked at his Vrindavan man and said, we have to open. How can we open on Janmashtami? This is the same fear it had. I wanted to see what is the situation. This is situation. This comes, expecting, wow, this is going to be grand ceremony, grand opening, and is one of the dearest temple. And all the devotees think, I think they're thinking that just like he opened other temples in the other part of the world, small, tiny houses, buildings like that. So they thought it's something like this. But he comes, there's no proper welcome in the sense that he has to walk through the half-constructed walls, past piles and sand and bricks. And he says, what is this? There is no temple here. How can you open this temple? It's not ready. We cannot open. Prabhupada said that everybody is coming. There'll be no opening. Ask them to stop. Send a message that they don't have to come. So somebody, Harikesh, is saying, well, the altar is ready. We can install the deity. Prabhupada said, you cannot open this incomplete temple. So this is the authentic temple Prabhupada is talking about. It's not just in time pass. And so all the managers, they were really afraid. Surabhi's wife ran after Krishna to pray to save from Prabhupada this anger. And Prabhupada went to the room. Then whoever could face Prabhupada's anger, they all joined, and Prabhupada actually became more serious and inside that. So somebody saying, I think Surabhi replied fearfully, saying, nobody actually knows about it, Srila Prabhupada. Oh, Prabhupada saying, no one knows, you didn't send the invitations for inauguration. And in fact, his god brother is also coming, right? All the god brothers, everybody. No one in Vrindavan knows, because they can see that we won't be ready. So Prabhupada says, well, this kind of talk. Now he says, how can we open on Janmashtami? Say, Srila Prabhupada, Surabhi said the doors are not ready yet. The doors are not ready. They will still cutting the wood. Prabhupada inquired about the deities from Yamuna, who explained that their paraphernalia has been purchased, but that the thrones were not ready. Okay, Cycle, you can read.
What is your opinion here? I'm totally unqualified to speak, Yamuna said. And although I have no right to speak, I see it as almost impossible to actually open the temple. There is no pujari. With a sense of finality and failure, Prabhupada said, then we won't do it. But we have invited so many people from all around the world to come, and I was not informed of this. Now you all decide. When can we open? Prabhupada asked. Can we open on Diwali? When is Diwali? October, Srila Prabhupada. How about Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's appearance day? A devotee suggested. That is at the end of December. Prabhupada was silent, looking displeased. Surabhi spoke up. It will take 6 months, actually 7 months. Then Prabhupada chose the day of Ramanavami in April. The opening could coincide with the annual gathering of devotees in Mayapur and Vrindavan. Surabhi spoke again. He had grown pessimistic from his experiences with construction in India. It depends on whether we can get the cement, Srila Prabhupada, he said. We have to get it from the government. That was the main obstacle preventing us from opening now. We could possibly have the opening in 3 months if we could get cement. All right, Prabhupada said, resigned. There was no use to trying to set a date. It will be done before next Janmashtami. His tone was sarcastic. And if the cement can be obtained, it can be done after 3 months. Later, while meeting with various individuals, Prabhupada continued to express his displeasure, especially to Gurudas. He asked questions but was dissatisfied with the answers. He asked Gurudas to bring the financial records, and then he reprimanded him more. Finding a receipt for Gurudas' stay in an expensive hotel in Jaipur, Prabhupada made an issue of it. Gurudas became aloof. When Prabhupada finished talking with him, Gurudas returned to his room, staying there unless Srila Prabhupada called for him. Prabhupada had began talking about changing the temple presidents in Vrindavan. He suggested Harikesha. Gurudas and his wife, he said, could be in charge of the guest house, which was as yet only a hole in the ground. He called Gurudas again and asked what he thought of his managing the Vrindavan guest house, suggesting he go to Jaipur guest house in Vrindavan for ideas about management. But Prabhupada Gurudas said, they charge such low rates at the Jaipura guest house. I am sure those rates must be subsidized. This Mr. Jaipura is a Marwari businessman, Prabhupada replied. He is not losing money on the guest house. He is making money. That is the art of management. That you have to learn by going there and seeing. But Gurudas felt too exhausted by the austerities of living and managing in India, where Prabhupada's attention and criticism were so demanding and intense, and where everything was so difficult. He and his wife began to think of leaving Vrindavan. Prabhupada continued to pressure Surabhi, calling him at different times of the day. Why aren't these deity doors up? Prabhupada demanded. I am trying, Srila Prabhupada, Surabhi replied. There are so many things to do. Never mind, Prabhupada said, you have to get it done. These hired men are all cheating you. Don't let them cheat you. It is not easy for all these devotees to collect money. It is all Krishna's money and can only be used for Krishna's projects. Protect that money and see it doesn't go in hands of the wrong people. I don't want the contractors to become rich because of our projects. I want marble on that building. Where is the marble? So, a little bit more. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada asks Yamuna, like, when will the and ask Yamuna about what is her opinion about the opening for the deities. And Yamuna Mataji says, I'm not qualified to speak, but it is impossible to actually open the temple. There is no pujari. And Prabhupada basically asks all of them to decide, like we've invited many people, many sannyasis to come from all over the world, and you decide when can we open. And Prabhupada says, can we open in Diwali, or can we open, like one devotee suggests, can we open on Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, that is end of December. And Surabhi spoke up saying that it will take 6 to 7 months. Then Prabhupada chose the day of Ram Navami. And again, Prabhupada, Surabhi speaks again, says that it depends upon when we can get cement, because that was the main issue. We have to get it from the government, and that was an obstacle. So then Prabhupada resigned, and he said there is no use of setting the date. Let's at least try to before next Janmashtami. And if the cement can be obtained, it can be done after 3 months. Then in the later, while meeting several individuals, Prabhupada was still not happy. He was expressing his displeasure to Gurudas, and he did not get good answers. He asked Gurudas to bring the financial records, and he saw a receipt for Gurudas' stay in an expensive hotel in Jaipur, and Prabhupada made a big issue of it. And Prabhupada decided to change the temple presidents in Vrindavan. He suggested Harikesha, and Gurudas and his wife, he said, could be in charge of the guest house, which was just basically still a hole, not yet started. And he asks Gurudas to go to the Jaipuria guest house in Vrindavan to see how they manage. And he says that those rates are very low. And Prabhupada says, like, that is the trick, that is the art of management. Like, he's a Marwari businessman, he's not going to lose money. He's making money. So we need to understand, like, how he is doing that, learn and go and see there. And Gurudas and his wife, like, they were getting exhausted by the austerities and the pressure and like the criticism they were getting, and so they're thinking of leaving Vrindavan. And Prabhupada continued to pressure Surabhi, who was one of the another manager, like, why aren't the DTE doors ready? And he says that there are many things to do. I'm trying. And Prabhupada says him, you have to get it done. Like all these people, contractors, they're becoming rich based on ISKCON projects. Like we don't want them to become rich. We should make sure that the money is spent nicely. And he says he wants marble on that building, and he asks, where is the marble?
Okay, Gaurav, you're reading it.
Where can I get marble? Surabhi asked. Why are you asking me these questions? Prabhupada shouted. You are the expert. I don't know. Use your intelligence. Ultimately, Prabhupada's anger with his disciples was incidental. The reaction due them for their foolishness was also a way of instructing them and testing them. The deeper was Prabhupada's transcendental impatience and frustration that his devotional service from Vrindavan was still not manifested. He wanted a wonderful temple for the glory of the Krishna consciousness movement, a temple that would establish Krishna consciousness all over the world. It was an offering to a spiritual master, and he had promised it to Krishna. But still, it was not complete. As for Prabhupada's disciples' failure to do the job, Prabhupada had to take the burden and the agony of that failure. His disciples were his instruments in his service to Krishna. If the instruments didn't work properly, then he suffered, just as when one's arms and legs failed to function. The whole body suffers. His disciples' failure to carry out his desire was his loss. In this way, he felt transcendental lamentation for their failure to open the Krishna Balaram Mandir on Janmashtami Day. Prabhupada's disturbance, though transcendental, was nonetheless real, was not feigned merely for instructing, nor could the devotees cheaply cheer up their spiritual master. For Prabhupada's disciples to properly assist him, they would have to understand his transcendental mood and serve him accordingly. Prabhupada wanted practical, down-to-earth service from his disciples. They should not expect to serve him sentimentally, but should work hard. Devotional service was dynamic. Prabhupada wanted his disciples to help him with his projects to serve his Guru Maharaj, projects which, if successful, could save the world from misery.
I will explain here. I don't know if you heard properly. So here asking.
The marble.
Yeah.
He was.
Surabhi.
Yeah. He was actually still mad because they kept asking questions, and then Surabhi had asked. Prabhupada had asked, "Where's the marble?" And Surabhi, this was Surabhi Mataji's job to get the marble, but she's asking Prabhupada, "Where can I get it?" And Prabhupada got angry with her again, saying that, "Why are you asking me these questions? You're the expert. You should know. Use your intelligence." But it's explained that Prabhupada's anger with his disciples was incidental, and it was for their foolishness because they hadn't informed Prabhupada about how they weren't even ready for the inauguration. But this was also a way of instructing them and testing them. But it was also, deeper was Prabhupada's.
Yeah. But deeper was Prabhupada's transcendental impatience and frustration that his devotional service in Vrindavan was still not manifested. Means because
his anger was due to the fact that he
is not able to fulfill those yet. And there's deeper satisfaction is transcendental, but ordinary people may not understand.
So he was.
His idea is because the thing is, this is the first largest temple and beautiful. Prabhupada has his vision, and these people probably do not know how to operate and do. And this Vrindavan temple is supposed to be setting example for nourishing all others. Just like now, we are always looking for Vrindavan temple. We are looking for Mayapur temple. So, but he promised to Krishna, it's not ready yet.
And as for the failure of the disciples, Prabhupada had to take the burden because his
disciples are instrument to serve Krishna. But if instruments do not work, then what can you offer to Krishna?
And his disciples weren't able to carry out his desires, and that greatly pained Prabhupada. And the devotees should be ready and always be dynamic in doing devotional service. They shouldn't always expect Prabhupada to just hand it into their hands. Right? Hand it into their hands. Like they should be ready and they should work hard and not take this a lightly thing, because for Prabhupada, everything in this movement is a very big thing, and he wants it done properly and done successful. Because if all these projects that he wants to do, which will help serve as Guru Maharaj, if they could be successful, then that could save the whole world from misery.
Nipa?
Getting concrete was a big problem. Surabhi, Gurnarnava, Tejas, and others were always meditating and striving how to get cement, yet it seemed no cement was available in the whole of India. As month after month they waited for government permission. Daily since Prabhupada's arrival for the so-called temple opening, the devotees had been traveling by bus and rickshaw to Mathura to see if cement, even a few bags, was available. Sometimes they were cheated. One shipment of 20 bags had been cut with other materials, and when they used it in casting a column, it remained soft for 4 days and finally crumbled. When at last enough cement arrived to complete the work, the devotees felt sure it had happened only because of Srila Prabhupada's presence. Prabhupada had Gunnar, Gunnarnava count every bag of cement as it arrived. From 8 in the morning until 9:30 at night, the shipment kept coming on trucks, each truck with 4 coolies to carry the heavy bags on their backs into the storage shed. Gundarnava stood outside all day with pad and pen, marking the receipt of each bag. Srila Prabhupada came out of the house several times and watched gravely. In the evening, when they were finished, he called Gundarnava in how many bags. So, how many bags? Prabhupada asked, and Gundarnava gave the exact figure. Everything is locked away now, Prabhupada asked. Yes, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada talked about the cement as if talking about a shipment of gold. August 12th. Prabhupada felt very weak. It was on the afternoon of his appearance day, and he was sitting at his desk in the main room of his house. He lay down on his seat and put his head against one of the arm pillows. The following day, he felt so weak he could not walk or stand. He had no appetite and ran a fever of 104 degrees. A local doctor arrived and examined Prabhupada, malaria. He prescribed some medication, which Prabhupada took once or twice and then refused. A second doctor came and prescribed different medications. Stop bringing these doctors, Prabhupada said. No doctor can cure me. It was August, the monsoon season, and many devotees fell sick. When Shruta Kirti, who had recently returned to his post as Prabhupada's personal servant, contracted malaria, Kuldri, who had come to Vrindavana to attend the temple opening, volunteered to assist. The Kuladri got malaria. The other devotees became ill with malaria, jaundice, dysentery, and various digestive problems. The weather was overcast, hot, and humid, and thousands of varieties of insects began appearing. For several days at a time, the sky would be cloudy, the temperature in the 90s. Then the sun would come down and steam everything up with almost intolerable heat. It was Vrindavana's most unhealthy season. As Prabhupada's condition worsened, the devotees became morose and even fearful for his spiritual master's life. They brought Prabhupada's bed out where it was cooler on the small patio outside his door. His servants would massage or fan him. Days passed and Prabhupada didn't eat except for a few grapes and some slices of oranges. This was the way his father had died, he said, by not eating. Such remarks frightened Prabhupada's disciples all the more, and they began visiting samadhis of Goswamis to pray that Prabhupada would be cured. One evening, Harikesha stayed up all night. One evening, Harikesha stayed up all night near Prabhupada's room, chanting softly a continuous kirtana of Hare Krishna. Prabhupada liked it. The kirtana, he said, is what actually gives us life. After that, devotees took turns so that there was always kirtana. Prabhupada explained that his illness was due to the sins of ISKCON leaders, 80% of whom were not strictly following the rules and regulations, he said. Even in Vrindavana, some of the devotees weren't regularly rising at 4 a.m. Since Prabhupada was speaking little, he had only briefly mentioned this cause of his illness. But brief as it was, it crushed his disciples. As for who was guilty, each disciple would have to say for himself. But in a mood of, oh God, what have we done? All the disciples in Vrindavana immediately became very attentive to the rules and regulations. things are, yeah. I think one more paragraph. Yeah. Getting concrete. Getting concrete was very difficult problem. And Surabhi, Gunnar, Nava, Tejas, and others were meditating and striving on how to get cement. And no cement was available in the whole of India. And month passed, and they waited for government permission. And since Prabhupada's arrival for the so-called temple opening, the devotees had been traveling by bus daily and rickshaw to Mathura to check if any cement was available. And sometimes they got cheated. One shipment of 20 bags had been cut with other materials, and when they used it to cast a column, it remained soft and had crumbled down. And when at last enough cement arrived to complete the work, devotees felt it had happened only because Srila Prabhupada was there. And Prabhupada had asked Gunanarva to count every bag of cement as it arrived, and he was counting it. From 8 in the morning until 9:30, the shipment kept coming on trucks, and each truck with 4 coolies. Gunanarva stood outside all day with pad and pen. He was making a note of all each bag. Prabhupada came out of the house several times and he used to watch gravely. In the evening, when the work was finished, he called Gunanarva and asked, "So, how many bags?" And Gunanarva would give exact figure. And then Prabhupada asked him, "Everything is locked away now?" And reply was yes. Prabhupada talked about the cement as if it was a shipment of gold. August 12th, Prabhupada was feeling very weak, and it was his appearance day, and he was sitting on his desk, and he lay down on a seat and put his head against one of the arm pillows. And it seems he got no appetite and had a fever of 104 degrees. And a local doctor arrived. He examined Prabhupada and diagnosed him with malaria, prescribed some medication Prabhupada used to take once or twice, and he refused. And then a second doctor was called. He prescribed some different medications. And Prabhupada said, "Stop bringing this doctors. Don't no doctor can cure me." It was August, the monsoon season, and many devotees were falling ill. And when Shruta Kirti, who had recently returned to his post as personal servant to Prabhupada, had also contracted malaria, Kuladari, who had come to Vrindavana to attend the temple opening, volunteered to assist, also got malaria. And many devotees became ill with malaria, jaundice, dysentery, and various digestive problems. And the weather was overcast, hot, and humid, and thousands of insects began appearing. And there were several days would be cloudy in the sky. The temperature was in the 90s, and sun came out, and it was steamy, everything with almost intolerable heat. And it was like an unhealthy season in Vrindavana. And as Prabhupada's condition was worsening, the devotees were kind of becoming fearful for his life. And they brought Prabhupada a bed where it would be cool and on the small patio outside the house. And servants would massage him and fan him. And days passed by and Prabhupada wouldn't eat. He just ate like few grapes and slices of oranges. And this was the way his father had died, he said, by not eating. And such remarks frightened Prabhupada's disciples more and more. And they began visiting samadhis also to pray for that Prabhupada becomes well soon. And one evening, Harikesha stayed up all night near Prabhupada's room. He was chanting softly the Kirtana of Hare Krishna, and Prabhupada liked it. This Kirtana, he said, is actually gives us life. And after that, devotees took turns to always do the Kirtana. Prabhupada explained that the illness was due to the sins of the ISKCON leaders. 80% was not following the rules and regulations, he said. And in Vrindavana, some of the devotees also were not rising up early at 4 a.m. And Prabhupada spoke very little briefly about the cause of illness. But this brief discussion also crushed his disciples. As for who was guilty, each disciple had to say for himself. And in that mood, oh God, what we have done, all the disciples in the Vrindavana became attentive of that and they started to follow the rules and regulations.
Haribol. So hope everyone doing well, right? I'm thinking in Monday, We will gather at the temple, we'll spend time, some service and some playing and prasadam together Monday. I'll post. Second, how does it sound?
Sure, Prabhu. Yeah. we can do that.
Yeah, it's Monday's off, so children can play, Mataji's can play, and we all can focus on some of the services, organizing, like one day go, right? It's a good time. So, but Nipa, you're doing well?
Yes, Prabhu.
Acha, yeah. Very nice. Let us know if you need anything.